The hum of the Galactic Senate's council chamber was a constant undercurrent, almost soothing, like the pulse of a great machine. But Lena Valeris could feel the tension thick in the air, a quiet hum beneath the surface of the glossy, polished tables and floating holograms. Today wasn't going to be one of those routine sessions. She knew it. Everyone knew it. Even the subtle glance shared between the alien delegates and the quiet murmur of hushed voices spoke volumes. Lena took her seat in the front row, hands clasped tightly in her lap. The mission she had undertaken, representing humanity in these negotiations, was always delicate. For the past few decades, humans had risen swiftly in the ranks of galactic politics, earning both admiration and resentment. But nothing had prepared her for the revelation she was about to face. Today's agenda, the Senate President's voice echoed through the chamber, includes several peace initiatives aimed at reinforcing our cooperation and trade routes. A few murmurs of agreement circled the room. Lena glanced to her left. Zorthak. The towering, reptilian council member from the Zoran homeworld was one of the oldest, most powerful representatives in the chamber. His sharp, emerald eyes glinted with arrogance. She couldn't help but feel a cold knot in her stomach every time she looked at him. His presence was suffocating, a reminder of his species' long history of power. And now, it seemed, that power was slipping away, and Zorthak was determined to claw back whatever he could. Even if it meant throwing the galaxy into chaos. She had received a tip, an encrypted message from an anonymous source, that suggested Zorthak was plotting against humanity. At first, she dismissed it as paranoia, the typical political gamesmanship that was all too common in the Senate. But something about it didn't sit right. Zorthak was too powerful, too calm to make an open move. Instead, he was playing the long game, using subterfuge, influence, and manipulation to keep humanity's influence in check. As the meeting continued, Lena's mind raced, going over the information she had received. The message wasn't specific, cryptic, in fact. But there had been mention of covert operations, alliances with shady syndicates, and military movements that didn't align with any treaties or agreed-upon pacts. It pointed to Zorthak, and Lena had no choice but to investigate further. Her thoughts were interrupted when a sharp voice cut through the chamber. Lena Valeris, it is your turn to present the proposed treaties on the trade routes, came the voice of Counselor Nira, a delicate, pale-skinned diplomat from the Talix species. She was an ally, but Lena knew her politics were always measured, never aggressive. Lena stood up, forcing herself to focus on the task at hand. The flickering holograms projected her speech across the room, displaying data on human trade agreements and new economic ties with various alien species. But as the numbers and figures danced in the air, Lena's thoughts were elsewhere, on the message she had uncovered, on Zorthak's smirk, and the haunting suspicion gnawing at her gut. The minutes passed like hours. By the time she finished her presentation, the room had become a blend of murmurs and polite applause. The diplomatic process was slow, but it was efficient. As the meeting recessed for a short break, Lena felt a strange sense of urgency. She excused herself, stepping out of the chamber into the corridor, where the noise of the Senate faded away. But before she could make her way down the long hallway toward her private quarters, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was Captain Mara, a trusted officer from the UHF, United Human Federation, Intelligence Division. She was a no-nonsense woman, always dressed in military blacks, her short hair clipped tight against her scalp. "Lena," she said quietly, "we need to talk." Lena's heart skipped a beat. "What is it?" Mara glanced around, checking that they were alone before leaning in. "We intercepted a transmission last night. It's from Zorthak's people." "You were right. He's been using his influence to destabilize several human colonies. Military strikes, covert sabotage, and we've just found evidence that he's preparing to escalate." Lena's blood ran cold. "What kind of escalation?" "Something big," Mara replied. "We think he's got the support of the karate mercenaries. They've been moving fleets in secret. All signs point to him trying to start a war." Lena's mind raced. This wasn't just some petty political move, this was a full-blown conspiracy. Zorthak was preparing to ignite a galactic conflict, and humanity would be at the heart of it. How long do we have before he makes his move? Lena asked, her voice steady despite the storm brewing inside her. Mara hesitated. It's happening faster than we thought. I'd say no more than a few days. Lena nodded, her decision already made. We need to expose this before it gets worse. I'll need everything you have. All the data, all the evidence. Get it to me as soon as possible. Mara gave a sharp nod. You'll have it. But be careful, Lena. Zorthak's not one to take kindly to threats. Lena's gaze hardened. I didn't come this far to be intimidated. Mara turned, disappearing back into the shadows of the hall. Lena stood for a moment, her mind racing. She was in deep. If Zorthak was really behind this, humanity was facing more than just a political struggle. A war was on the horizon, and the galaxy would never be the same. Her datapad buzzed in her pocket. Lena quickly checked the incoming message. It was encrypted, a series of codes that only UHF intelligence could generate. The message was simple: Zorthak's plan. There, in black and white, were the details of his machinations, military strikes, secret deals with criminal organizations, and worst of all, plans to use his position in the Senate to frame humanity for the conflict he intended to start. Lena took a deep breath. This was bigger than any one person, any one faction. It was about the future of humanity. The Federation. The peace they had fought for. Zorthak had underestimated them, underestimated her. And she wasn't going to let that stand. She walked back to the Senate, her mind already formulating a plan. The chamber was filled with chatter as the break ended, but Lena moved with purpose. She approached the podium where Zorthak was standing, speaking quietly with a few of his allies. His eyes met hers, and for a moment, their gazes locked. There was something in those reptilian eyes, something dark, calculating. But Lena wasn't intimidated. She had the truth now. And she wasn't going to let him get away with it. Zorthak, she said, her voice carrying across the chamber as she approached. We need to talk. He turned to face her, his lips curling into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Ah, Lena Valeris. Always a pleasure. This time, she said coldly, I'm not here to negotiate. The council chamber felt colder now. Lena couldn't shake the chill that had settled over her since confronting Zorthak. His cold smile, the way he dismissed her with barely a flicker of interest, it only reinforced what she already knew. Zorthak was playing a far deeper game than anyone had imagined. As she stood in the hallway, her datapad still clenched in her hand, Lena fought to control her breathing. Every moment she wasted here, Zorthak's machinations were advancing. Mara's words echoed in her mind, a few days. That's all we have. It wasn't just a political struggle anymore. It was a race against time. Lena had made the decision. It was clear now that Zorthak's conspiracy was more than a plot for political gain. He was trying to ignite a war that would place humanity at the center. She needed to act quickly, gather support, and expose him before his hidden alliances reached full strength. She turned on her heel and headed for the UHF command station, located beneath the Senate building. A discreetly placed elevator took her down, and the air grew thicker the deeper she went. The scent of machinery and urgency filled her senses. As the doors opened, she was greeted by the cool, professional faces of her intelligence officers. Director Valeris, Lieutenant Juno said, standing up from his station. He was a short, wiry man with an impeccable attention to detail. His voice was calm, but his eyes betrayed his concern. We've been monitoring the situation. Zorthak's contacts are already in motion. Mercenary fleets are moving toward the border systems. If we don't act soon, the karate could be in our territory by the end of the week. Lena nodded. I know. I've seen the intel. We need to move faster. I'll need the full dossier on his military alliances. Any detail, no matter how small. And I want to know everything about the karate. Juno didn't hesitate. Already compiling, Director. We've intercepted messages, some encrypted, some not, suggesting that Zorthak is pushing for a preemptive strike on our colonies in the Rim. Lena felt a tightness in her chest. The Rim was one of the most vulnerable areas of human expansion. Any attack there would cause irreparable damage, and worse, it would be impossible to prove who was responsible. Zorthak had been clever. He wasn't just attacking human territories, he was setting humanity up to be blamed. I'll need you to bring in the key allies. The Torosians, the Reger. We need to create an emergency coalition before this turns into a galactic war. Juno hesitated for a brief moment. There's a problem with that, Director. Zorthak's been working behind the scenes for months. He's already made sure that the more influential factions in the Senate will side with him. We've got nothing but a few allies left, and they're weak. Lena clenched her jaw. Then we have to convince them that they have a stake in this. We can't afford to wait for more political games. I'll speak to the Torosian ambassador myself. Juno nodded, his expression somber. Understood. We'll be ready for your signal. As Lena exited the command station, she felt the weight of the coming storm. There was no turning back now. She had seen the signs too clearly. Zorthak's betrayal was a declaration of war, and humanity's involvement was no longer optional, it was inevitable. The Torosians were an ancient species of nomadic warriors, their culture built on honor and strength. Their leader, Ambassador Travis, was a towering figure, covered in scarred metal armor. He sat in the waiting chamber when Lena arrived, the air thick with the faint scent of burnished steel and sweat, a reminder of the Torosian way of life. Ambassador, Lena greeted him with a measured nod. I need your help. Trathis' voice was a low growl, like thunder before a storm. I know why you've come. You have news of Zorthak? I do. Lena's voice was steady. And it's worse than we feared. He's orchestrating an attack on the human colonies in the Rim. But that's not all. He's manipulating the Senate to make it look like humanity started the conflict. If we don't act quickly, we'll be fighting on all fronts. Trathis' eyes narrowed, and the muscles in his jaw tightened. The Zorans, always scheming. Why should the Torosians risk their lives for humans? What's in it for us? Lena met his gaze, unflinching. Because if Zorthak succeeds, it won't stop with us. He'll come for you next. And after that, no one in the galaxy will be safe. The Zorans won't stop until they reclaim their lost empire. The Torosians have always fought for survival. This is no different. Travis stood, his hulking form casting a shadow over Lena. He leaned forward, his eyes glowing with the fire of ancient fury. You think me a fool, human? The Torosians fight for honor, not for alliances with those who cannot match our strength. I think you're more practical than that, Ambassador, Lena replied evenly. And I think you understand that this isn't about honor. It's about survival. Zorthak will rip apart everything you've fought for unless we act together. There was a long pause, and then Travis stepped back, his massive hands clasping behind his back. I'll bring this to the Council. But do not mistake my alliance for weakness, Valeris. If I fight alongside you, I expect my people's respect to be honored. Lena inclined her head. You'll have it, Ambassador. We're in this together. The next few days were a blur of meetings, encrypted messages, and quiet whispers in the corners of the Senate. Lena pushed forward with determination, convincing those who were still on the fence. The Reger delegation came through with promises of military support, though they would not be able to send a fleet for another week. The Karate were still a wild card, but Lena's spies had reported that they were undecided. She had to act quickly, before Zorthak's propaganda turned the rest of the Senate against them. At the same time, Lena was gathering her own resources. The UHF was preparing its fleets for possible retaliation. If Zorthak tried to strike first, humanity would be ready to defend itself. But Lena knew that they couldn't fight a war on their own. She needed the coalition to hold. Every piece of information, every ally she could pull in, had to count. It was late into the evening when Lena received the final piece of the puzzle. Mara's encrypted message came through. the karate had sided with Zorthak. There was no more time to waste. Lena sat in her office, the weight of the galaxy pressing down on her shoulders. The room felt smaller now, suffocating almost. She took a long breath, staring at the map of the galaxy projected before her. It was a game of alliances, of shifting power, and every move had consequences. Zorthak had underestimated humanity. But Lena would make sure the galaxy wouldn't forget who they were. The atmosphere on the Senate floor was thick with tension, a charged stillness hanging in the air as the final votes were tallied. Lena Valeris stood at the center of the room, her back straight, hands clasped tightly behind her. She had not expected things to escalate this quickly, but Zorthak's hand had been forced. The karate had sided with him, and their fleet was already moving toward human territory. The hour of reckoning was upon them. Across the room, Zorthak loomed, his cold gaze sweeping over the assembly like a predator eyeing prey. His reptilian features were stoic, almost impervious to the mounting pressure around him. He had played his cards well, too well. But Lena wasn't about to let him win. Not now. Not when humanity's survival was on the line. The chamber doors hissed open, and the Senate president, an elderly Talix with calm gray eyes, stepped forward, signaling the beginning of the emergency session. Council members, the president began, his voice low and grave, we are here to address the situation that has unfolded before us. Zorthak, you stand accused of conspiracy, of inciting war against the human colonies, and of treason. The floor is yours. Zorthak's eyes gleamed with that trademark arrogance as he slowly rose from his seat, his large frame casting a shadow over the Senate. He clasped his clawed hands together and addressed the assembly in a slow, deliberate tone. I have worked for the prosperity of the galaxy, he began, his voice rich and commanding. It is humanity's expansion, their unchecked aggression, that has caused this unrest. They have taken too much space, threatened too many worlds. It was inevitable. Lena's pulse quickened. She could feel the eyes of the council turning toward her. This was it. The moment when everything would either fall apart, or humanity would have a chance at survival. You are wrong, Zorthak, Lena's voice rang out, cutting through the growing murmurs. It is not humanity that has caused this unrest. It is you. You've been playing a game of power, hiding behind political maneuvering, and using war as your tool to control the galaxy. And now, we're all paying the price for your greed. Zorthak's eyes narrowed, but his voice remained calm. I've done what was necessary for peace. I will not allow one species to disrupt the balance of the galaxy. Lena took a step forward, her expression hard. And what about the thousands of lives you've already condemned to death, all in the name of that balance? Your mercenaries are already crossing the borders. If we don't act now, millions will die. There was a sharp intake of breath across the room. Some of the council members shifted uncomfortably, others exchanging looks of doubt. Lena's words were having an effect. It wasn't just rhetoric anymore. Zorthak's actions were real, and they were tearing the galaxy apart. I have evidence, Lena said, her voice cutting through the tension, proof of your dealings with the karate. You've been funding their fleets, providing them with weapons to strike at human colonies. You were never interested in peace, you only wanted control. For a moment, Zorthak remained silent, his face unreadable. But Lena saw it, a flash of anger in his eyes. The moment he realized the depth of the evidence she had uncovered. We've intercepted communications, images, everything, Lena continued, unfazed. You were hoping to provoke humanity into a fight, to make us the aggressors. But you didn't count on us working together. You didn't count on us standing united. The silence in the room was deafening. The council members shifted, and a few whispered among themselves. Zorthak's allies were beginning to look uncertain, their resolve weakening. It was exactly what Lena had hoped for. You think you can outmaneuver me, human? Zorthak's voice was low, venomous now, his claws scraping against the metal podium. I have spent decades building my influence. I will not be defeated by a mere human. Lena's gaze never wavered. You may have been playing the long game, but you underestimated one thing, Zorthak, you underestimated humanity's will to fight. You thought we'd cower, let you dictate the terms. But we're not afraid of you. And we're not afraid of war. Zorthak snarled, but before he could respond, the Senate president spoke up, his voice unsteady but firm. Enough. This is a serious accusation. The evidence must be reviewed. Lena turned to the president, her voice resolute. The evidence is irrefutable. Zorthak's plan is laid out before us. If we don't act, the karate will be in our space within days. His fleet is already mobilizing. The president nodded gravely, then turned to the rest of the council. We will convene an emergency vote. All those in favor of bringing Zorthak to trial for treason, raise your hand. Lena's heart pounded in her chest as the vote took place. The council chambers seemed to stretch into infinity as the hands slowly began to rise. One by one, members of the Senate raised their hands, some reluctantly, others with decisive confidence. The tide was turning. When the final count was made, Lena felt a wave of relief wash over her. The majority had voted in favor of trial. Zorthak would be held accountable. But it wasn't over yet. The real battle was just beginning. Zorthak's face twisted with rage as he slammed his fist against the podium, his claws leaving deep gouges in the metal. You cannot imprison me, he hissed. I will make you all pay. This isn't over, human. The karate will come. You have no idea what you've unleashed. Lena stood tall, unwavering. I know exactly what we've unleashed. And we're ready. As Zorthak was escorted from the chamber, Lena felt a strange calm settle over her. The first step had been taken. The galaxy was waking up to the threat, and the truth was out. But she couldn't afford to rest. The war was coming, and she needed to prepare. Turning to face her allies, Lena saw Mara step forward, her expression hard. We've got a fleet of our own ready, Director. We'll need to move fast. Zorthak won't sit idle for long. Lena nodded. I know. But we have time. He's exposed himself. Now, we take the fight to him. And with that, the final play was in motion. The galaxy had shifted. The balance of power had tilted. Humanity had survived the first strike, and now they would fight, together. And Zorthak would regret ever underestimating them.